Hey everyone, Jim Coventry from RotoWire here. The first week 18 in history, unless you counted the playoffs of old week 18, but not such the case here. Don't know how many questions we'll have today because I know fantasy season is over for most, but we can talk just NFL games. If you want to know how anything I break down in the NFL games, if you're gambling, props, certainly, I could give you some rationale so you can make your best decision because that's always my goal. My goal is not to tell you who to start, sit, or bet, it's to give you information so that you can make your best decision. So that's all that we're looking to do here. That's always the point. All right. So anyway, I'm going to give a couple seconds to see if anybody joins in. If not, we'll just start going to some breakdowns of some games here today, and I'll take questions as we go through those, and we'll get you guys set up. So I think first we probably start with the game tonight. Oh, good. Got Mooney or Russell Gage. Got a question here from Kevon. All right, so Kevon, look, I think the Bears play everybody in this game. I think that's really important to them. And Andy Dalton, I think, is good for Darnell Mooney. I think the Minnesota side of the ball, I think they're a little discouraged right now because they had good ideas for a successful season and it didn't pan out. So I think the Bears are more motivated than the Vikings here. Mooney to me is going to be a strong wide receiver too, regardless. And Minnesota, and Mooney's a wide receiver one for the Bears. We know that. Minnesota's bottom 7 against wide receiver ones. So that's not so good. Russell Gage, he's had a good second half. There's no question, but they're playing New Orleans here. And look, Kyle Pitts is playing on a bad hamstring. So I don't know how long he plays, but I don't think it's an overly great matchup for Gage. And if Pitts doesn't play or gets pulled out with the hamstring and Gage gets treated like the number one, he's Marshawn Lattimore, that's problematic. So I think there's more variables with Gage. So I think Mooney's a better player. Foreman or Burkhead, to me, this is fairly easy. I expect that the Titans play with the lead here. And when they play with the lead, they run the ball. They're a top 9 run blocking team. They're playing a team that's bottom 7 against the run. And so, therefore, I think Foreman should have plenty of volume. That's what that would say. Now, Burkhead's going to play a lot, that's for sure. But Tennessee's not a good matchup. Tennessee has their numbers, I think, belie what they are. They're middling against the run. And, in terms of receiving back, so they're middle of the pack. They're like number 11. But I think Foreman is a better player at this point, and playing with a lead game script benefits him better. So great job. Anybody on Instagram have questions? Definitely send those out. I'll start breaking down some games. Otherwise, I'll pop back with questions. I don't expect many today. It'd be great if we got them. So, all right, Chargers at the Raiders. What are we looking at here? It's an elimination game, right? And they're playing in Vegas. Now, Vegas has won 3 straight, right? But think about the games they won. Now, they did beat the Colts this week, but Carson Wentz was on the COVID list all week and didn't practice. It was a mess. Their offensive line had guys who were out sick, and then they came back. So it wasn't a full-strength Colts team. And remember, they had that game against the Browns when the Browns is on Tuesday, and the Browns had a bunch of players who more than half their team, it seems like, had COVID. And the Raiders took advantage of those situations. And then there was another game in there that, it was fortuitous. And the Raiders are barely winning these games. The Chargers are a significant level above those teams. The Chargers are mostly healthy. The Raiders look great. Their coaching staff did a wonderful job with all the adversity they have. And I know they're at home here. But I think ultimately, I'm going to bet on Justin Herbert here. I think that the Raiders, you can attack them through the air. They're bottom 10 in pass DVOA. And I think Justin Herbert does that. And although the Raiders are top 10 against the run, Austin Eckler's not your typical running back. He torched the Raiders like 115 yards on minimal carries, like mid-teens carries the last time they played. So I think, they're going to be able to take advantage of moving the ball. Darren Waller, I don't know if he'll play, game time decision, hasn't played since Thanksgiving. So, and look, the running game, we know that the Chargers are bottom of the barrel, DVOA in the rush. But here's the problem. The Raiders are number 30 in run blocking. Josh Jacobs, he may be an excellent back, but he hasn't had blocking all year, and his inefficiencies have been brought out maybe because of that. We don't really know what Josh Jacobs is, but we know that he had a big game, a week ago on carries. But realistically, I just don't see it happening here. I think, and ultimately, Joey Bosa called us out like in week 4, said that when you get pressure on Derek Carr, he crumbles. And they know that from being divisional opponents. Don't think for a minute they're going to be extra diligent in planning pressure schemes against a very, very weak offensive line to get to Carr and to rattle him. I believe they do that. I believe the Chargers play with the lead. It's not gonna be a blowout in any case. It seems the Chargers really don't tend to blow teams out anyway. But I do think ultimately the Chargers have advantages where, good question. I'll ask that in a second. So I think ultimately Keenan Allen is going to have a tougher matchup on Nathan Hobbs. Hobbs is going to be a tougher matchup for him. But Keenan Allen's a premier route runner. He's going to be able to get open here, and I think that's not going to be an issue. Now, Mike Williams, I'm not expecting much from him because the Raiders get pressure without blitzing. Basically, Yannick Ngakoue and Max Crosby, they bring the heat, and they're able to cover on the back end. And then also that pressure, quarterbacks don't have time to go downfield as much. So Mike Williams was like 1 for 11, like on 4 targets the last time they played. And unless they integrate him in the middle and short area of the field, which on occasion they do, but not really, that would be their advantage. But I really think it's an Austin Eckler game. I think the secondary targets definitely step up because the Raiders are not going to do well with the secondary receiver targets, whether that's Jalen Guyton, whether that's Josh Palmer, whether it's Jared Cook is active. They're going to have opportunities and advantages there. And again, I think still Keenan Allen gets his done. Now, the Chargers, I still, like I pointed out, I think that the pressure rate's going to get there. I don't think Josh Jacobs is going to put them in good down and distance situations when they run. So ultimately in this game, I don't think it's super high scoring, though. I think the Chargers come in and score about 24 points. The Raiders score somewhere in the 20 range. I think it's closer. Raiders may score late because they're very gritty late in the game. All right, got a couple questions. MJ Kranga, news on Connor. The latest was he practice limited. We're going to get, hopefully, and I haven't gotten, Schefter didn't say anything. Schefter really didn't give any early active. Every week he does. Basically, it was like player performances. My guess is that Connor plays. This is my gut because Chase Edmonds is out. They have to win. Because if they could get a home game, they need a home game. They don't want to be on the road in week 1. That would not be advantageous for them. Now 49ers have had the Rams number. They beat them like 5 straight games. If the 49ers beat them and the Cardinals win, they play at home. Now, otherwise, they're going to Dallas, most likely. And that's, I know they just beat Dallas. I don't think they do it twice. We learned a lot in that game. Dallas didn't play well. Dallas looked much better last night. Now, I know Philly sat a lot of guys, so I got that. But I think Dallas is much better in a rematch here because Cliff Kingsbury isn't the guy that's going to make the adjustments. Don't see that happening. Even though they won, there are adjustments to be made, and I don't see him being that guy. I think Connor plays. Now, in terms of the game, that's a late game. So we're not going to have definitive word on that. So if you have players in a lineup that you're hoping on early, you've got to look that way unless there's a definitive report. But as of right now, and if anybody hears anything, post that. All right, let's see. Scott, all right, man. Do I have a sleeper wide receiver that could hit big? So I think this is always tough in week 18 because we really don't know which teams are going to bench players, which are going to look at new players for next year. I'll look through the game slate as I'm looking at this. And, that's going to be tough to identify. So Indy and Jacksonville, probably not. Jacksonville is what they are. Treadwell's been playing well. Connor did practice limited this week, Kevon. He practiced the whole week limited. Chicago, Minnesota, there shouldn't be any sleeper receivers there. KJ Osborne is in a good spot there. Washington and the Giants, again, sleeper receivers. Here's one. Cincinnati, I know they got Brandon Allen playing. I do think they're going to shut down Chase and Higgins because they're not playing their quarterback. They're not playing their running back. They got a bunch of guys who are not going here. So in this case, Mike Thomas, because Auden Tate's on the IR. So Mike Thomas could be the guy that comes through for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's probably the deep receiver I could look at here right now that could come up with a big game. Brandon Allen's not very good, but he's playing a Browns team that may be without almost their entire secondary. They have a lot of guys that might miss here. Got another question on Insta here. Is Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins is fully expected to play off the COVID list, is expected to play here. So, I don't have to worry about the Sean Mannion show again. Kevon, Taysom Hill or Huntley? So, to me, this one is fairly easy because Taysom Hill basically owned the Falcons last year. For him, He had 232 and 233 passing yards in the 2 games. For him, that's good. He averaged like 66 rushing yards. In the 1 game, he threw 2 passing touchdowns, and the other he ran for 2. So he did very well against them, and I don't think Atlanta is going to have any special answer for him. Huntley, on the other hand, there's more film out on him now. So here's what happens when we have quarterbacks that, aren't great. They have a big game or two, but they come in and there's film on them. Pittsburgh is going to be problematic for him because that pressure rate. Pittsburgh is going to put a lot of pressure on him, and they're going to cause him to make some mistakes here. And I don't think against that pressure, I don't think he's going to put up big rushing numbers here. I think this game is probably, this Pittsburgh-Baltimore game is more likely to be lower scoring. Both of these teams are going to look to punch each other in the mouth. It's that slugfest. But I think both of them have limitations on offense. And I think both of them are well prepared to be able to squelch down any advantages the opposing offense may have. So I think Taysom Hill is a much stronger play here. Randy, good to hear from you, man. Oh, thank you, man. I love breaking down games. That's actually my favorite part. I'm an NFL guy that happens to do fantasy. So, yeah, so if anytime I can break down games, and I'm going to break down playoff games. I'll be on the XM show next week. We're just going to do playoff game breakdowns. It's not going to be really – it'll be a fantasy show because that's what we do. But I'll be breaking games down there. And those will be broken down before everything kicks off. The first game kicks off like 4:30 Eastern on Saturday. That show will be done by 3 Eastern. And break them down in order. So SXM app would be great. I'm also planning on doing previews with Josh Viscai, who I linked to my Twitter. And those will be Friday night, I think. So I think we'll do, and if he can, I got to check his schedule. But I think that's what we're looking at for doing some game previews as well. Kevon, yeah, Connor did practice limited this week. So it seems that he is going to go here. Scott, you got Brady or Taysom. So the Bucks do want to win here, I think. I think that's kind of the vibe I'm getting, that Arians wants to play this one out. But there's risk. There's risk. If Mike Evans strains his hamstring again, they may just simply say, you know what, just get the starters out. We got a game next week. Let's get ready to play it. I think there's a lot of risk with Tom Brady this week. On the other hand, Brady could have a massive game. Taysom Hill, there's like little risk. They're playing Atlanta, so he definitely has a floor. Definitely has a fair ceiling. It's a must-win game. Atlanta's a divisional opponent, so they definitely will try to ruin things. But I don't think they have the defensive personnel to stop Hill on the ground. So honestly, Brady has higher upside. Brady could throw 4 touchdowns. He could throw for 400 yards. Now, he needs like a ridiculous 488 passing yards to break the all-time passing record. And although that's possible, it's not probable. So, again, Brady on his merits is a better start, but you assume risk. If they pull him at halftime, that may not be so good. If they fall behind, let's say they just bonk, which we know they do. So we'll see with that. But I'm worried about Brady, just for that. But otherwise, I mean, he's a great play. But Taysom, I think, is safer. Ertz or Knox. So, Kevon, Ertz has gotten, it's like, I'm going to count in my head. I think it's 33 targets in the last 3 games. Since DeAndre Hopkins was out, Ertz has become like their lead receiver. And it's funny because they obviously don't play the same role, right? Ertz is in the middle of the field. Hopkins is an outside alpha. But yet Ertz is that reliable chain mover plus, and that's what they've gotten out of him. And so Ertz is a great play, because we know he's going to get a ton of targets. And I'm trying to check here. Seattle is number 23 against tight ends in DVOA, so they're a bottom 10 unit. So this is a great matchup. On the other hand, Dawson Knox is extremely volatile, but he's a player I did on my bounce backs for SiriusXM yesterday. I love him this week because it's going to be like 19-mile-an-hour winds. There might be snow. The forecast is dissipating, so I'm not sure what the snow's like, but the wind's going to be there. And I think when they get they want to throw short, I think. I don't think at 20-mile-an-hour winds, I don't think Josh Allen is necessarily going to be ripping it downfield. I think that Knox is going to see targets. He's going to see end zone targets. But again, Ertz is way safer. And I don't even know, Knox has multi-touchdown upside, but I would probably lean on the safety of Ertz. Those targets have been money, and I don't see those going away. Kyler Murray just loves him. All right. Oh, good, Scott. All right. That sounds good. And Patty, any fantasy things I can today? Because So, I mean, what I look at is this. I mean, obviously, you got DraftKings. You could go that route. If sports gambling is legal, player props. Tell you one prop I really like. Marquez Callaway under on the receiving yardage. And I love that because AJ Terrell, the corner from Atlanta, Mario and I were talking about this on the series show yesterday. I've been thinking about it. Mario brought it up as well, so that was perfect. But he is like turned into a shutdown corner, and they'll move him. And Callaway is like the only receiver that they have to worry about. They're not putting him on Deontay Harris for the 25 snaps he plays, but Harris would be too slippery for him anyway, my guess. And they use him as a gadget guy anyway. But so I think that under yardage on Marquez Callaway is a really good bet. So Patty, fantasy things, those I think are the things that you can do. You can do some DFS. We'll talk, like I mentioned before, Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox is a great upside play in a tournament. He's a little bit on the cheaper side. He could get you a couple of touchdowns. I love they're playing the Jets here. The Jets are terrible against pretty much everything. But we know ultimately, and Singletary's gotten some stuff done, but we know they want to throw the ball. So I think that's really important. And Scott, the Broncos, as expected, fired Vic Fangio. He said something great in his presser afterwards. Look, he called it out. He goes, the difference between us and the other teams in our division is quarterback play. So good. It was good. He threw it back on them. He had a top 10 defense the whole time he was there. He did his job. But when you're giving him Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, who's going to win, right? But here's the thing. Somebody must pay. That's always the way the life works, right? Somebody must pay. And so, sure, chop the head coach. That's easy because you can't fire all 22 players. You can't fire the quarterback unless you have a new one. So there's a lot of variables. And certainly the general manager isn't going to fire himself because he's the one that got them in the quarterback mess. They really screwed up in the draft. They must have thought they were getting Aaron Rodgers because when they passed on a quarterback, it was ridiculous. That was the one need they had. They have great skill position players. They have a great offensive line coach that gets way more out of that line than they should. And the defense was very, very solid with that Fangio system. So that was frustrating. Rodney, all right, Keyshawn Vaughn or Antonio Gibson. What I like here, and I talked about this yesterday as well, Gibson's off the injury report. So whatever that hip issue was, it's gone. He was on the COVID list. He's practiced this week. Gibson, I like the entire Washington football team. So if you're playing DFS, I think that's something you think about here. Because, look, the Giants, the coaching situation, not good. I really think that they've given up. They've had so many injuries, misfortune. They're at home. I don't think they show up to play. Maybe I'm wrong. It's a divisional game. But Washington, Ron Rivera is a guy that people will play for. And I think that's huge. Ron Rivera is a great motivator. He's a great human being. Not that the other guys aren't, but he is. And his players will show up. And I think Antonio Gibson is a big part of what they want to do today. And obviously, J.D. McKissick long gone on the IR. Patterson did a nice job subbing him. Thank you, Jared Patterson. Helped me win my Kings Classic. Kings Classic, that was the biggest. That was my Super Bowl. That was my Super Bowl, winning the Kings Classic. That was great, but I'm talking about my stuff, but that was huge. Anyway, so let's get back to what we're talking about. So Gibson's a great play. Now, Keyshawn Vaughn, yes, he's getting reps. Le'Veon Bell be mixed in. Vaughn has a rib injury still. He's playing. He's off. I think he's off the injury report, but he still has injured ribs. So I think ultimately Gibson is probably a better play here against a checked out Giants team. And the Giants, they're like bottom 6 in rush DVOA. They're number 27. So I think this is a great matchup for Gibson. Vaughn, I think here's the thing. We talked about Brady earlier. If Brady stays in, they got a lot of passing things. Like Gronk he needs 75 or 80 yards for an incentive, three receiving touchdowns. There's big money incentives too. Mike Evans, it's only 50 something yards, but he needs for another 1,000-yard season. And Brady has some things in the passing game that he can make some incentives for. So I think ultimately, if they're competitive, I think that they want to throw the ball. That's my guess. If they pull him, that's great. But then they might pull Vaughn too, because if Vaughn has injured ribs. So I'm going to say Gibson. All right. I had something that I don't think is in English, so I can't answer it. I apologize. Randy, you got a question here. Any games or teams I'd stay away from or attack from a prop? This is gonna be funny. So for VSiN, the gambling network, I'm representing RotoWire as a game correspondent. I have the Cincinnati Cleveland game. So I went to BetMGM, and there's one player prop. That's all they have. It's the kicker, Evan McPherson, who's not even going to play. So that there's no player props. So, but that's a funny point. So both of these teams are going to be missing a ton of players due to injuries, COVID, done for the season. But what I like on that game, it's a stay away game. There's going to be like 17-mile-an-hour winds, and they have 2 backup quarterbacks. I especially like the first half under in that game. I think it's 19.5. I think the winds will be the strongest early in the game based on the weather report that I saw. And I think that that's a really good play because I think with the wind, they're going to try to both run the ball early. If one team gets a lead, there might be a little more fireworks in the second half. Not that either team could really do that. Again, I don't expect Jamar Chase and Higgins to play long. Burrow's out. Mixon is out. 2 offensive linemen are out. And Uzama's out. I don't know how you keep your stud receivers in there when your other starters are sitting. I could be wrong. There's no guarantees on any of this, but I love the first half under here. Nick Chubb is off the injury report, but you wonder how much they're going to really subject him to. But I think it's a heavy run game. Also, if a prop shows up for Samaje Perine's over on the rushing yardage, Cleveland is missing players on their interior defensive line. So if that shows up, it'd be great. So other things you have here, and if you have any questions on Insta, I see a lot of you here, but ask questions if you have them. I'll get to them. If I only have a few questions like I have now, I'm just going to take my time answering them. So, Randy, so let's go back to your question. Games or teams where I'd stay away from or attack. The Bears and Vikings, I do think the Bears are going to try to get some things done, but I don't know how much firepower they have. So I think overall that's more of a stay away game. I think that Mike Zimmer is supposed to be fired. That's the word on the street. And I think they're just getting ready to pack it up. Can Justin Jefferson have a big game? Yes, of course he can. But I'm very worried about motivation in that game, that this game could be a complete egg. I'm worried about that quite a bit. Look at some other games. See, a lot of these games have one team that has to play. Most of the games, there's one team that has to do something. Look at Detroit is going to play hard, but Green Bay's probably going to pull starters. Jets and Buffalo has 19-mile-an-hour winds. I would look at some unders on Jets receivers. Anything you can find, whether it's Crowder, whether it's Keelan Cole, whether it's Zach Wilson, the 19-mile-an-hour winds are going to be problematic for them. And I think I would go under on them. I would stay away from the unders on the like Michael Carter rushing, because Michael Carter could end up doing okay here. So I would like that. And looking at the Arizona Seattle game, I like AJ Green. And I don't know if they're purposely going to get him targets for an incentive. He needs like 75 or 80 yards to get like 250,000. That may not be important to them, but I do think he gets some targets here, and I think his outside matchup is good. So I like that. Taysom Hill, props on him with rushing. I would go over on his rushing prop. I think that he's going to run a lot today here. Alvin Kamara under on anything receiving. Anything receiving on Alvin Kamara is an under. Last year in 2 games against Atlanta with Taysom Hill, he had a total of 2 catches for 9 yards. So those are some starting points. If you have specific ones, Randy, just throw up a specific game, and I can kind of give you a little insight on that. We can go from there. Scott, man, I thought the Cowboys would sit players, and they played until they had 40 points on the board. So the more we think we know, the less we find out we really do know. Look, Aaron Rodgers has a toe injury. It's a significant toe injury that needs surgery. If they sit him, he gets 2 full weeks off before a game. To me, no brainer. Maybe you play him a series, right? But I don't know that. Devontae Adams, you get him hurt, your season's over. Your playoffs are done. You're not winning a playoff game if you know against Devontae Adams in a loaded NFC. So, I just don't see it. I think Patrick Taylor at running back is going to see a lot of work today. I think Jordan Love is in. I just can't see it. And they're on the road. Detroit plays hard. So my prediction is a series, maybe 2, but they would be dumb to even put Rodgers on the field for 1 snap. If somebody steps on his toe and it gets aggravated worse, man, that would just be the most dumb thing they've ever done. But again, we give people far too much credit sometimes for doing the right thing. Kevon, do I expect any volume? So Mike Evans needs, I think it's like 52 yards for 1,000 yards, which is 8 straight seasons. I think he'll be the only player ever to do that. I think that's important to get them there. But if his hamstring, and it seems to be ignored now, it seems like that maybe in the past, if his hamstring is a problem, then they're not going to risk him. but I would expect him to get that 50 yards if he's healthy. And the assumption is he's practiced. So the assumption is he's okay. So I think he's okay. I don't think he has a monster game because if they're going to have touchdowns and they're going to be down in the red zone a lot, Gronk's got that. It's like either 500,000 or $1 million, something like that. Gronk needs 3. I could probably tell you this. I think I have this somewhere here. But Gronk needs, let me see, I have it on a tab here. Anyway, if Gronk needs like 3 touchdowns to have some massive incentive, and I don't know that I have it here, so I apologize. Thought I had this on a doc here. I did at some point. All right. So anyway, so I think that Gronk would be the one drawing the red zone targets today if that was the situation they had going for them. And that's just my take on that. Yeah, so right, I expect the Bucs early. If they're going to play their starters, they're going to throw. That's the way they're going to attack it. So it's 500,000 for Gronk. So yes. So I know Brady will look to get his guys their money. He's got an incentive for yardage. He's got an incentive for receptions. Gronk needs like 7 or so receptions, I think, to get another incentive. So I do think it's a big Gronk game. The book set his prop high. They said like 73.5 yards. That's a high prop for a tight end. So they really made that one competitive and challenging. So that's a little bit concerning. But I think if you're playing in DFS, I think Gronk is a phenomenal play this week because if Brady goes for those incentives with him, that might be the route to go. And you know what? Even if you don't play Brady, you could play Gronk because if, let's say, Gronk does the damage, and let's say he doesn't make it to those incentives. Let's say he doesn't get the 3 touchdowns. He gets 1. And let's say he gets the 85 yards and 7 catches. Well, he may do that, and maybe Brady doesn't do a lot else. So it's possible there. So, all right, I think I'm out of questions, so let's break a couple other games down here. 49ers and the Rams. This one is going to be great. I mentioned earlier the 49ers have won the last 5 meetings between these teams, and I think I know why. So basically, even back to when Brandon Staley was the defensive coach of the Rams, and they were playing at an elite level with elite talent. Now, remember, the Rams lost a lot of their defensive infrastructure in the offseason. They lost the players who weren't the most heralded names, but they were a big part of that defense. Well, what the 49ers did was Shanahan would get his receivers involved at or behind the line of scrimmage, get them the ball quickly, design them into space before the cornerbacks engaged. They used the rub routes and the pick plays, and they would get Debo and Ayuk the ball before anybody could engage. And actually, Kittle's had success against them as well. And they've been a good defense against tight ends. So when we look at it this way, I don't think the current coaching staff is making an adjustment that's going to slow down what's worked for Shanahan in the past. Because as I see it, the Rams believe in what they do, and they continue to go that route. Defensively, they believe in their talent and their system. So I think that Shanahan continues to have great success. Now, we know Jimmy Garoppolo is playing with a bad thumb, but when we're looking at these passes that are not going more than 3 yards from the line of scrimmage, that's how they attack the Rams. So I don't think the thumb's an issue there. And I think that there's all this yardage after the catch. So, honestly, when I'm looking at this game, I love Debo Samuel. He's the one. He's the one. He is the one when you get the ball in that particular paradigm. And he had over 100 total yards and 2 touchdowns the last time they played earlier this year. He was used both as a runner and a receiver, I believe 7 catches, 5 rushes, but he just tore them up. And I see more of that today. Now, on the other side of the ball, so San Francisco does have a good pressure rate. They're top 5 in pressure rate. But the Rams they've held per PFF. They're the number 1 pass blocking team. I mean, I don't think they're quite that. I think they're good. I think they're not great, but I think they're good enough. And so here's what we have to look at. So last week, it was a similar situation for the Rams. The Rams played Baltimore. Great run defense, terrible pass defense, missing players, and they bonked. They scored enough points to win late, but they bonked. Stafford was awful. It's the same situation this week. 49ers are even better against the run than the Ravens. 49ers are top 2 run defense. They're not as bad against the pass, but they have 4 of their top 5 corners remaining. They've already lost a ton on the COVID list. So I should say 3 or 4 corners and free safety Jimmy Ward. I don't expect any of them to play. And as we say this, I'm going to check their depth chart very quickly here. Let me just check their depth chart. But as we say this, I don't think that they have the defensive personnel to stop them. Now, the problem for Sean McVay has been that in the last 5 or 6 weeks, It was smart that he decided to go with a more balanced approach. They're running the ball more. But the problem is now he fell in love with it, and he doesn't know how to go away from it. He needs some games. Like last week against the Ravens, he needed to go away from it and attack with his passing game. Get Matthew Stafford in the rhythm. Get his confidence back. Well, I hope he learned something last week, but I can't guarantee that. So let's see. You know what? The 49ers cleared players from their COVID list. So actually, it's still a great matchup. Still a great matchup. But they cleared everybody from their COVID list. I'm glad I checked this now. But I still think ultimately they're a bottom 12 pass defense. That's getting worse as the season goes on. Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham are massive mismatches for that secondary. And their best way to go at them is to attack them through the air. Now, they haven't given Odell the volume, and maybe they're waiting for the playoffs. Maybe they're waiting to unleash him until they have to. Maybe they're keeping that in their back pocket. It's very possible they are because they use him in the red zone, but we know he can get behind a defense. We've seen it already. So, but Cooper Kupp is going to get his. Now, Cooper Kupp, he's another one. He needs, the yardage numbers aren't in front of me. He needs like 173 to reach 2,000. He needs like 133 to break Calvin Johnson's record. He needs 12 catches to break Michael Thomas's reception record. And last time he played him, he went 11 for 133. Or 127, 11 for like 127. So basically, he needs pretty much the same game he had then. But I think they're going to lean on him more here because they have to win. See, both teams have to win. But the Rams, it's the 2 seed. The 2 seed means a lot. It means you're at home for 2 playoff games if you win. And if the Packers get upset, that means you're home throughout the playoffs. And so that is a big deal, the 2 seed. 3 seed, not so much. 4 seed, but that's now the 49ers, we know basically it's winning they're in. If they lose and the Saints predictably beat the Falcons, 49ers are on the outside looking in. So I like the over in this game. The over came in at 44. It may have been bet up since, but the number when I initially put the number on my spreadsheet, it was 44. But I do like the over here. Matter of fact, I got to bet this one as soon as we're off here. I'm going to bet the over on this game. Kevon, we got a question here. Do I think Penny? So the one game Penny didn't do well, we predicted that one. We saw it was a matchup that wasn't really going to work. The 3 big games, including the first one. I remember telling people on my Serious Weekly Free Agent video to pick up Penny the week before he went off because Carroll was talking him up. And I said, look, if he's healthy, he can play. And he's been healthy and he's been playing. So there is nothing to shy away. Arizona. So here's the deal with Arizona. People will look at their run defense and they'll say, oh man, they're a top 5 run defense. 2 things. A, their schedule of opposing rush offense has been fairly soft. There have been games where they've had leads and teams have abandoned it. But since J.J. Watt went out, what is it, week 9, week 8, somewhere around there, they get pushed around at the point of attack. And teams that have committed to the run have done very well against them. And so, yes, I do believe that we know Pete Carroll wants to run. He'll run as long as he can. Even if game script doesn't dictate it, he'll run. So I think Rashad Penny continues to play hot. Now, certainly if they fall behind by enough, they would abandon it. But I think there's a very solid chance he hits 100 yards and scores a touchdown again. Man, he was one thing. I had a player prop with 3 guys that find the end zone last week. I did have Penny. I can't remember. I missed one of them. But anyway, another story for another day. So, yes. So I do think that game, Rashad Penny is in good shape here. Other games that we're looking at here, let's see here. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, I said it'd be fun to watch that game. Pittsburgh is horrid against the run, bottom 3 run defense. Everything fell out on them. And so Baltimore, they know this. And John Harbaugh is going to go in with that attack. They're going to run. And Devontae Freeman had a good game against them the last time they played. He did not heavy carries, but I think they're going to look to run the ball, move it on the ground, keep their young quarterback out of trouble. I think that's important. And so I think that they're going to run. I don't think they're going to throw a lot here. Mark Andrews has he needs like some ridiculous 141 yards to break the all-time tight end yardage. But Pittsburgh has held him in check when they played him the last couple times. I don't think Tyler Huntley is going to get against Pittsburgh that game because of pressure rate. Remember, we said Pittsburgh has a top pressure rate, and that's going to be very problematic for him. So I think that's going to be something there. Now, Pittsburgh, we're going to see the usual. Najee's going to struggle to run against a top 6 run defense. They're going to throw. My God, Ben's average depth of target the last 3 weeks has been like an all-time low. It was 2 point something, like 2.4 yards last week. It was the worst ever. The week before was like 4.7. It was 6 the week before that. Those are his 3 lowest marks of the season. So I think as the season's gone, just like last year, his body's falling apart as the season goes on. I don't think he can throw the ball at all. He couldn't throw it all year. We call that in the preseason. I was stunned. Football Outsiders, they were saying Ben's going to have a huge year. I'm like, guys, you watch film for a living. How do you not see that Ben is toast? And anyway, somehow they didn't see that. I don't know. Maybe they just love Ben, which is fine. Great player, Hall of Famer, right? But anyway, so that's going to be a problem. Now, Deontay Johnson should get his. He gets all those targets. They've been less efficient lately because Ben is struggling so badly. He gets those 11, 13 targets, but now we're not seeing the gaudy yardage. Now, he lit him up in week 13, Deontay did, and that was before Ben really hit the skids on the average depth of target. It was more closer to 7 and 8 back then. So, but I think Deontay Johnson still has a functional game. But if you're playing DFS, I would not count on him there because I don't think, again, this game is high scoring. I think this is one of those typical old school 17-13 Steelers-Ravens games. I'd be more inclined to pick the Ravens. Both of these teams have minuscule playoff chances. The Ravens, it's 3.5%. It's 9% for the Steelers, but both teams don't want the other to be successful. So, yeah, it'd be fun. Monopoly credit, Damien Harris or Samaje Perine. So here's what you got to think about. I know New England has to win, but realistically, they're going to be a wild card team. They could bet on the fact that the Jets could beat the Bills, and they could win, and they could get a home game next week. Damien Harris has come out of 2 of the last 3 games he's played with a hamstring injury. He hasn't finished. My guess is they either play him and sit him, and inactive should be coming out right about now. So many of you see inactives, just let me know. I can probably pull those up since we have many questions here. So honestly, Damien Harris is excessively risky. I think Ramondre Stevenson sees the Lions' share of the work because if they're in the playoffs next week, they need Damien Harris. They need both of their running backs to be able to do what they want to do in the playoffs. And I don't know how they put in a running back with a gimpy hammy in there. So look, Harris is an elite touchdown scorer based on what he's done the last half season. But there's merit to playing him for that upside. But Samaje Perine, the Browns are down people. The Browns, and I'm going to pull up let me pull up the depth chart here because I want to see if they had any players cleared at the last minute. So, they're missing their left defensive tackle. All right, they did take somebody off there. And Denzel Ward and Troy Elson are now 2 corners, which doesn't impact Samaje Perine just the same. But they pulled some people off the list. Now, their strong safety, Ronnie Harrison's inactive. He's part of their run support. So I do think Samaje Perine does get a lot of work here. I think this is going to be a heavy run volume game. And so I do think Samaje Perine can get you 65 yards here. Always a chance to score. So I think he has a very significantly higher floor than Harris because if Harris doesn't play or if Harris is limited or pulled out quickly. But Harris has more upside. Harris has 2 to 3 touchdown upside, right? And we know that Miami, as a team, they blitz a lot. They're not great against the run. They're not terrible either. So, Miami's 13th against the run. So, again, I think Perine is safer this week. But if you've got a swing for defense, I think Harris would be your swing. Because Perine will, if they do fall behind, unlikely, and it's probably a close game throughout. But Chris Evans could be a factor in here. All right, let's see if we can find some inactives here. We can go over those for anybody that needs to know here. See if anything's coming through the wire here. All right. Gibson, we know is that Antonio Gibson. We knew he'd be active. No problem there. Curtis Samuel. Wow, he had active. He didn't do anything this year. Deontay Johnson with COVID is active. We talked about him a moment ago. He's expected to play. Paris Campbell is active for Jacksonville. Not important here. But if you're playing DFS in the playoffs and you're looking to spend way, way, way down and hope somebody gets a screen pass and runs 80 yards, there's something to be said there. Now, they're playing without Xavier Rhodes. Ben Benago, he changed pronunciation of his names now. I don't even know what it is. So they're down a couple defenders. They're playing Jacksonville. It's no problem there. The Bears have the usual. Akeem Hicks is inactive, so that's good if Dalvin Cook's going to play. And the Tennessee Titans, a couple linebackers out. Derek Robinson and Jayon Brown are out. But again, they're playing the Texans, so the Texans could be a little sneakier. Oh, T. Higgins is inactive for The Bengals. So, yes. So, again, we go back to this point where people aren't playing for them. Now, I'm surprised Jamar Chase is active. So, now look, no Joe Burrow, no Joe Mixon, no T. Higgins. Evan McPherson, the kicker, is out. They have some. CJ Uzama didn't practice all week, but he's active. My guess is he sees few, if any, snaps. I don't know how in good faith they put Jamar Chase out there. But if he's only one guy, he's Jamar Chase, right? But at least it's not Joe Burrow throwing him the ball. So I think that's going to be really problematic. If Myles Garrett's playing, then the backup quarterback's not going to have much time to throw here. So Brandon Allen could really struggle. I don't think Brandon Allen's going to be able to get the ball. I could be wrong. Get the ball downfield to Chase. So, yeah, I think that first half under. Pound the first half under on that game. The wins are going to be really heavy. Texans, nobody of consequence. Chris Conley is inactive. That could mean Nico Collins sees a little bit more work. But overall, they're playing the Titans. The Titans are probably going to get some pass rush on them. So I think Brandon Cooks is really it. Obviously, we know Lamar Jackson's out. Anthony Averett, the corner, is out, which is very good news for Deontay Johnson. Now, with Deontay Johnson, we don't know what his conditioning is. If he had actually COVID, he may be playing at far less than 100%. Oh, Randy, if you could tell me, if you could Google up what Chase needs for the single season record, he's right. So that's, if you could see what that number is, I'd really appreciate it. If not, don't worry about it. If somebody can look it up, because Chase, you're right, Chase has an incentive. He can get that rookie receiving record. And it was funny because he already broke Justin Jefferson, but somebody from the 60s had there, and I wasn't aware of that at all. Antonio Brown undergoing ankle surgery. I wonder if he really needs it or if he's doing it to make sure he gets his money. Oh, that's funny. Shouldn't say that. The Seahawks have no plans to trade Russell Wilson. We'll see what happens with that. All right, so inactives, anything else I see here? All right, if anybody has questions, put them up on the screen. I'll be able to answer those for you. If you don't have questions, I think at this point we'll probably just end up calling it a Week 18 day, come back for the playoffs. I'll wait a couple minutes if Randy's looking that up, and I could actually look up that incentive too at this point. Kareem Hunt is inactive. We kind of thought that could happen. Dearness Johnson could mix in with Nick Chubb here. Josh Reynolds is playing. Jared Goff is playing. Aaron Jones is sitting out. So that's important. So, I don't know how long A.J. Dillon plays, but Patrick Taylor could be a fun dart throw in DFS. We already knew J.D. McKissick was. They listed him inactive, so he must have finished his 3 weeks on the IR. So he's not playing. Trey Sermon not activated. Eric Kendricks for the Vikings is not active, which actually bodes well for David Montgomery as a receiving back here. And Cam Akers is expected to have a small role in the game, which I thought last week if he's going to play, it'd be a few carries to get him ramped up for the playoffs because they apparently say he looks fantastic. Jimmy Garoppolo is expected to start. We talked about him a little bit earlier. So that's what I have there. Yeah, let's say Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase incentive I'll type in. Incentive. Oh, no. Rookie record. All right, let's see what we get here. All right, let's see here. He has a chance to break a 61-year-old record. Let's see what he needs here. Jamar Chase could break it on Sunday if he plays, and right now it looks like he is playing. The record is 1,473 yards. Chase has 1,429, so he needs 45 yards to break the record. So that would be it. So if he hits that 45 yards, odds are he's out of the game. So my guess is he doesn't have if he gets one long touchdown catch, that would probably be it. And like I said, thank you, Randy. 45 from breaking it. Houston Oilers, Bill Groman. Man, I didn't even know they threw the ball that much. That's crazy. I'm shocked I haven't heard of Bill Groman. He must have been like a one-year wonder or something like that. Thank you for looking that up, Randy. Much appreciated. Anybody else have any questions? I'll give you like 30 seconds, come up with a question, and from there we'll see. But again, Aaron Jones is out for the Packers. I think there'll be more dominoes to fall on that as time goes on. I will be back for the playoffs. I either will come on this channel and I'll post during the week what I'm going to do here. And if I don't, I'll definitely put on my Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL. If you're not following me, please do. If you do that, then I'll make sure that, you're obviously aware of when I do other types of streams, especially during the playoffs. I break those games down in great detail, helps you with gambling, fantasy, or whatnot there. And doesn't look like, yeah, good, Randy. Yeah, thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Everybody, good luck today. I will be back next week. Check my Twitter feed at Jim Coventry NFL. Julia, good day to you as well. Good luck with everybody, and everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.